Hi. I just woke up, so apologies if my voice is a little raspy. But I wanted to talk about something I think that's pretty important that's just been on my mind recently. And it's attraction does not equate to compatibility, and there's a lot that goes into that. And I wanted to talk about it because it seems really important to think about because you can be attracted to someone pretty easily. It's not necessarily a matter of decision. It happens. You talk with someone and you realize that you are really similar and your personalities sort of mesh together in a really positive way. That is a very good thing, but it does not equal compatibility. And that's a really hard thing to realize and to think about because when you mesh well with a person, you want to assume that you mesh well on everything, but that's not always the case. And that can be a really hard thing to come to terms with because attraction's a powerful thing and it's a very positive thing when you work well with someone. All you can think is, how positively you feel about interacting with that person, which I think in a vacuum is a great thing. It's a very positive thing to have somebody, romantic or not, that you really mesh with, that gets you in that way. And I think that's a good thing, but comes with a little bit of a clause here. That cannot be the foundation that you build a relationship on, because if you're serious about a relationship, you have to look for more than that. It's not like it's inconvenient to say the least, especially if you really want a relationship. But if you want a lasting relationship, you have to be willing to sacrifice the timeline that you'd prefer for the future timeline that's sustainable. And I think that's a really difficult thing to think about, because if you're attracted to someone, that's all you want to worry about, right? Is that you mesh really well with this person, they're nice to you and all that. But if you're not compatible on the fronts that are really important, then it it it's hard to reconcile that. And it's also dangerous because if you end up being in a relationship with that person and later on down the line things start not adding up, or you're going different places, or you have different priorities that are really in conflict with each other, chances are that only happened because you ignored it for so long, because you really liked this person. And that can happen when you're compatible too. You ignore things when you like somebody, no matter what. That kind of always happens. But the things that you ignored aren't always that negative. They're not always make or break. If you're compatible with a person and you're attracted to them, it can just be imperfections that you grow fond of because of that. But when it's a person that you fundamentally have different values or different priorities or different things, it'll clash with each other, whether you like it or not. It's unavoidable if you're not careful. And so I think a lot of people, especially people that are really lonely, they'll fall into looking for attraction rather than compatibility, because attraction in and of itself is hard enough to find mutually. And I get that, and I'm not necessarily faulting you for that. It's understandable, but it's important if you're serious about looking for a lasting relationship. It's not just attraction that goes into it. Attraction should be in a relationship, undoubtedly, but it can't be your priority. And that's a hard thing to accept, because you want the Romeo and Juliet type love, You want the desperate attraction, the mutual butterflies and happiness that comes with that, but you sort of miss the part of the story where they had a one night stand and then killed themselves because they were off attraction. And I know that's an extreme example. That was kind of out of pocket. I apologize, but the point is that in a lasting relationship, it can't just be attraction. It can't. It won't survive. It won't be healthy. It won't be communicative. It will be very surface level, even though from your perspective it'll feel very deep. And that sucks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. That really does suck. So what can you do to remedy this? And there's no clear-cut answer here. Sorry, I just cracked my knuckles. I probably came up on the mic. There's no really clear-cut answer to this. I'm giving it from a Christian lens, obviously. I don't know if the profile tipped you off, but for me, it's always going to be being equally yoked. That's going to be the first thing I look for, because I can't build anything off the assumption that I'm going to be the one leading them to Christ, because if I don't, then that's unequal in many, many ways, and that's a really big problem. And so I'm not going to presuppose that, or I'm not going to assume that that's God's will. And there's a lot more that goes into compatibility, especially for me, than just that. That's probably the top of my list, but there's a lot of things. Because as much as I hate to admit it, I am very picky. Like, I want a serious relationship very badly, but I'm picky because I know what I'll need out of a relationship. And also, in this day and age, abstinence, that's a prerequisite that I have to drive home, because my flesh doesn't want abstinence. No, I want intimacy, of course I do, but it'd be so unwise to allow that. It'd be disrespectful to my father. It'd be disrespectful to me as a Christian. And so there's a lot of things that I have to worry about before I worry about attraction. And the struggle with that is there's no clear-cut way to, veto everybody for your priorities before compatibility and attraction, And so it's a gamble with a lot of things. And the best advice I can give on how to remedy that is the people you surround yourself with, because chances are you're going to meet your future partner through people. That's how social interaction works. And I know we live in a digital age, and I know that a lot of our interaction is done digitally, and I'm not a subscriber to that belief. I try to push back against that as much as possible, because I think people are social. God made us social. We're supposed to interact with people. And I think that's a really important thing, and we've drifted away from that. There's not social gatherings as much anymore, and the social gatherings that are there are like parties. I hate parties. Parties are you will never catch me at a party. It's not my thing. So it's hard to find a good balance for that, to find people to surround yourself with that aren't a danger to your priorities. And that's also just advice for friendship, not even in relationships, just friendship in general. Don't surround yourself with people who are like-minded, but surround yourself with people with similar convictions. Because you don't have to be like-minded to believe the same things. And that will lead to a lot of healthy discussions, because if you have the same convictions but different opinions, or the same convictions and different thought processes, you can learn a lot from that person. And I would even say that you don't have to always surround yourself with people with the same convictions, so long as they're respectful, or they're kind people, or they're people that have decency. That's not a bad thing if they believe different things, because if they're respectful and good people that you trust, you can have respectful dialogues with them. And respectful dialogues are the best thing for everyone's mind. But I think your inner circle should be people that, at least on a perfunctory level, you share the same core values as. Because if not, then your companionship's going to be built off of differences in opinion that are swept under the rug. And that's a bit dangerous. I'm not going to say it's impossible or like completely unhealthy, but I think it's a bit unwise, because you'll feel like you're hiding a bit of yourself when you're around them. And I'm not saying like this is a prerequisite for best friendship or anything, but that tends to happen and fall into step regardless. But back to relationships. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. When you surround yourself with people that you trust, and you trust them to trust good people, you are going to meet more people. And that is probably the best way to veto compatibility over attraction, because if they're friends with people of similar values that to you, who you are also friends with, they're more likely to align with you. And again, that's not an end-all be-all advice. I'm just saying, socialize. Find yourself in places that are conducive to the environment that you find yourself in, like libraries or what have you, whatever your interests may be. I will never advocate for finding love at parties, because, at least for me, that's me personally, you might look for different things in a relationship, but parties don't tend to attract the monogamous types, at least in my experience, and also not the Christian types, so that I tend to stay away from those, but you may be looking for something different. But I think it's important, and this, if you take away one thing from this video, take this away, it's that you will regret it later. If it's just attraction, if it's just instinct, if you go solely off of how you interact with that person, how you bounce off them, how they mesh with you, you will regret it later in some facet. You gotta do your due diligence to find a partner. It's hard work. It sucks, but it'll be worth it. Because then you won't have to worry about much of anything in regards to them. And that's the hope, you know. That's the goal. And I think it's just a mistake that a lot of people make. Is just, you know, going off those rosy feelings. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing, depending on the circumstances that you meet, if you already know that person, or know what that person believes, and there's little differences that you can sort out later. But it's a gamble. And it's not a gamble I would make, because heartbreak is a very volatile thing. Yeah. I think to close this out, again, sorry, this is my first video. I don't know how to handle this, so I was gonna like do some kind of something, but I'm gonna read a Bible verse. Let me find something here. I'm reading from the King James Version. If that's a problem, I'm sorry. It's what I have. What's a good verse to end with here? I think it's in Ephesians. Sorry, I'm going off memory here. Aha, I was right. Let's see, this is going to be Ephesians 5:20. Let's start at 28. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. 30. For we are the members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. 31. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. My sister-in-law is knocking at the door. That would be my sister-in-law, right? Yeah, because my brother's wife. Anyways, I will see you later. Thank you for listening.